News Radio 700 WLW.
Just listen to our newscast and story that we had on there about people feeling overwhelmed by where the economy is right now and just how bad people seem to think it is. Perception is often reality. But there is good news on the economy. Yes, it's not as easy to fill your tank up with gas inside your own family budget. Get that. Yes, some grocery prices are high, particularly beef. But on the other hand, jobs just exploded in the month of May, and unemployment is holding steady. And inflation, although not anywhere where anyone wants, compared to where it was under Biden, is still pretty danged good. But yet that message isn't getting through to folks. There's a roadblock somewhere. There's something happening where even though people can see in black and white exactly what the numbers say, whatever piece of good news that there is out there doesn't seem to be resonating. And I'm just wondering why. The market is exploding, and then I saw this yesterday. 1/3 of Americans' wealth is now tied to the stock market. And I've often said this in any way, shape, or form, whether you are invested in the stock market, whether you have a 401k or not, you are at the behest of the markets. If your company is making money, chances are you're not going to get laid off. And there's a very good chance you might get a raise. And then, of course, there were the tax cuts that President Trump and his administration put into effect that took effect this spring. But what's going on here? Why is this perception out there? And how much of it is tied to reality? Steve Cotton is a financial strategist. We have Steve on quite a bit. He is the president of Cotton Wealth Management and has been in the business for over almost 50 years, just about 50 years. And I like having Steve on because he speaks a lot of sense. Steve, how are you on this glorious Saturday?
Hey, Ken, I'm doing really well. It's always an honor to be on with y'all.
Well, I'm glad you're here. Now, look, the job report was robust in May. It exceeded expectations by almost 100,000 jobs. We know the tax cuts went into effect. We know gasoline is up because of what's going on in Iran. One would hope that that is temporary. But even with all of that, the American public, at least from what we're hearing, just seems to be, let's just say, nonplussed by all of the good news. Why is that message not resonating?
Well, I think people are naturally reacting to the elevated prices we see at the gas pump. I think the national average for gasoline now is over $4 a gallon. Diesel is higher than that. And I think, for people who drive a lot, for whom transportation is a big element of their daily expense picture, those gas prices and diesel prices are hard to get around. Diesel prices affects transportation of groceries. Beef prices are up and elevated. We've got the potential of a screwworm problem in South Texas, which will affect cattle ranches. But all the good news that you commented on is correct. Inflation's up from 3.5 to about 3.8, but wage earnings are up an average of 3.4% over the last year. Jobs are stable. We estimated we'd have 88,000 new jobs in May. We had 172,000. That's outstanding. So it's a mixed picture, but I think people are just naturally reacting to what they see at the gas pump, and the news media is harping on these negative things and completely overlooking the positive.
Well, I mean, I don't minimize anything here, so please don't think I'm doing that. But if you have a 15-gallon tank in your car, and it's roughly $1.50 more to fill your car up than what it was at this time a year ago, we're talking $22 a week. Now, listen, $22 a week is a lot to a lot of people, but it's not like that's complete Armageddon. You would hope what's going on in Iran is short-lived, but the longer it goes on, the harder that is to believe. I really think the issue is diesel. I really think it's getting food from source to consumer. And I think you hit on it. I think that's where a large amount of what's plaguing the economy right now, grocery prices and indirectly fuel prices, is the price of diesel fuel and these truckers being able to get these goods to the consumer. If I had to pinpoint one thing, that would be it. I'm not underplaying the fact that it may be $22 more a week to fill your car up with gas. Not underplaying that at all. I'm just saying I think diesel is probably more of an issue than it is for the consumer at the pump. Am I wrong?
No, I think that's correct. And of course, inflation, with elevated petroleum prices worldwide, petroleum affects literally almost everything we do. It's in the packaging of food. It's used in pharmaceuticals. It's not just at the gas pump. And I think you're seeing a lot of these prices permeate through the economy. But we had 9% inflation during the Biden years, and that was structural. That was due to gross overspending through a war on energy, which drove energy prices higher on purpose in favor of, the Green New Scam and things like that. We don't have that kind of inflation anymore. Right now, our inflation is more situational, and it's directly related to the elevation in oil prices because of the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. I do expect that to be resolved sooner rather than later, but I don't think it's imminent, because I think the Iranians are negotiating in bad faith, and they're going to drag this out as long as they can until literally the IRGC is being chased by mobs of Iranian freedom fighters that want to take back their country. That's the only time this is going to get resolved, I think. Yeah,
I think that's a sketchy bet, because I don't place a lot of faith in the proletariat, if you will, in Iran. They don't know any better. If you're under 55, all you've known is this thumb down rule on you by these nutball clerics. But we'll see. I could be dead wrong about that, But yeah, I don't think that's going to come to any conclusion soon. I think they're very savvy to what's going on in this country. They hear the news reports. They know there's an election in November, and they also know that it's a bipartisan support now for Congress to take the War Powers Act away from the president and put it in the hands of Congress. Well, you put anything in the hands of the U.S. House of Representatives and the Senate, you're talking about FUBAR right there to the nth degree. So I think that they understand greatly what's going on here. But be that as it may, I think if this oil thing gets resolved, I think if there is that flow of oil again that brings the price of gasoline down, I think that people will start feeling better about where they are. I mean, everybody got a tax cut. You have what seems to be robust employment. Unemployment is pretty steady, and you've got a lot of these people that have come to this country to do harm rounded up and shipped out of here. So I think if the fuel situation comes into focus a little bit in a better light, then I think people will start feeling what's going on here, and maybe not just being overwhelmed by the bad news that you find on Twitter and other news places. I think that's the key to the whole thing, because it's, again, as you well know, perception is reality, isn't it?
Well, it is. And let me give you a couple of other data points. We're seeing a significant amount of reshoring of manufacturing back to the United States, the being able to expense capital investments, capital improvements in your business in a single year versus over the next 20 years is a huge factor driving economic output and growth. We've got support for the domestic car industry, because you now get a tax credit if you buy a car made in the United States. We're seeing historic IRS refunds for 2025 hitting this year. And disposable income for many people is up, not to mention their 401ks exploding. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of good news out there if you look at the facts, but it bothers people when they have to pay a lot more for gas at the pump. But this is a far, far cry, Ken, from 9% inflation under Biden.
Yeah. A couple of things. Do you anticipate, and because home buying has now is virtually it's tough. Let's just put it that way. And a lot of buyers are finding that sellers are pulling homes off the market just because the market isn't to where their needs are. They might have gotten into the market back in, or might have refinanced back in in the COVID era where you could get great rates, 2.9, 3% on a mortgage. People don't want to move because of that. I mean, it economically, it makes a lot of sense for them. And although the Fed and its interest rate cuts don't directly affect mortgage rates, there is an indirect effect. I'm just wondering, you have a new person in charge of the Fed. Powell is still on the committee, but you have a new chair. I sense they're going to raise rates and not cut rates. Am I wrong?
Well, there is a small faction on the Federal Open Market Committee among the Federal Reserve Board of Governors that sit on that committee that are being a lot more hawkish in terms of fighting inflation and are starting to talk about the possibility of a rate increase. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think the Fed is going to hold fast where they are for a while longer. And that doesn't help our debt service. That makes debt more expensive. It doesn't stimulate the economy. But there's a lot of stimulus and growth in the economy, in the pipeline, a huge amount. For example, we just passed the first $1 trillion defense budget last year. President Trump's coming back with a $200 billion defense appropriation supplemental request on top of that. And the FY27 proposed budget's going to be about $1.5 trillion. When you think about all the subcontractors throughout the country and all the defense and related industries, that is a huge bow wave that's going to come through this economy. And I am very cautiously optimistic that our best days are ahead. Inflation is going to come down with the drop in oil prices, and it'll come down fast. And we will begin to see that effect. And I think come November, we could be in a very different, much more positive situation.
Yeah, he's got to get Iran, Trump has got to get Iran figured out before fuel prices come down. And honestly, I thought it would be wrapped up by now. We just went through a major holiday, Memorial Day. We have the July 4th holiday coming up. This is when people are on the road or in airplanes, and they're finding out that those airfares have gone up because fuel has gone up. But that, I mean, for everything to happen with what you just said, none of it happens unless they settle Iran, and they settle it quickly, right?
Well, I think it needs to be settled. You know, one of the problems here, Ken, is that the international insurance carriers like Lloyd's of London refuse to write policies on tankers in the Gulf until, you know, they're convinced that everything is over and things are settled down and the tankers can proceed unmolested. So the insurance carriers are part of the problem. I think I'm puzzled a little bit as to why the president's continuing to try to negotiate with these bad actors in Tehran that have never negotiated in good faith. And I think it's either because the pro-Western allies can't find the right anti-cleric factions to take back the government, or because there's another piece of this under the surface where we're conducting covert operations to try to arm and equip the Iranian freedom fighters that definitely want to throw over the government.
Yeah.
So I think there could be some silent things going on here.
Yeah. Well, the sooner the better on a number of levels. But there was some good news on the economy this week. Unfortunately, it's not resonating yet with the public because of, as we said, gas and inflation. But you know what, Steve? Onward we press. We appreciate your time today. Have a great rest of your weekend, and thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Ken. It's always a pleasure.